Welcome to a Semgrep webinar. I am Tanya Janca. I am your host. I am here with Dr. Kim Wuyts. Kim, could you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Hi, I am Kim. I am Manager Cyber and Privacy at PwC in Belgium. And before joining PwC, I have a long career in academia where I worked on privacy threat modeling mostly.
Amazing. So I am Tanya Janca. I work at Semgrep and I do, security advocacy, meaning doing awesome stuff like this with amazing people like Kim. And I met Kim at a conference through a whole bunch of friends who are super into threat modeling. And they all kept talking about this woman named Kim and how she made this amazing threat modeling game, and like she knows all about privacy, and she does like this privacy threat modeling thing. And so then I went to go see her speak at OWASP Global AppSec, and I kid you not, she combined a bunch of my favorite things: privacy, threat modeling, and ice cream. And I was like, I'm hooked. I'm a fan.
I still like that analogy so much. Yeah.
So Kim, privacy is like, it's not a clear path of how to get to privacy. So I was hoping that you could share kind of like your journey of how you got into privacy and then maybe how you got into threat modeling, or it's just such an unusual thing, right?
Yeah, it's actually the way around. So I started as a security researcher in AppSec, and on a project we had to, well, analyze the security problems. So of course we did threat modeling, used Stride, all of that. And colleagues were, privacy colleagues were also on the project, and they had to do the same for privacy. And they were struggling because they didn't actually have a method or anything. So they were looking at the way we were doing it and our results, and they went like, oh, that's so cool. Should we be able to do something for privacy too? So we teamed up, and that's how we came up with the privacy threat modeling framework, LINDDUN. And that kind of got me rolling into the privacy community, and I realized I like this even more than security. I mean, security is very fun, but privacy, it has so many nuances, and that it's such an interdisciplinary field because you have also legal stuff and ethics and yeah. So I kind of by accident, I would say, rolled into it, and I stayed because I so much enjoy it.
Oh, that's awesome. I think privacy really matters. I've had many people say to me, so like when I first started training, that, well, I have nothing to hide, so privacy doesn't matter. And I used to give these hacking workshops all the time with my friend Nikki Becker, and Nikki would say, "You got blinds on your windows?" And they'd say, "Yes." And she's like, "Why? Thought you got nothing to hide." And then they'd blanch, right? And I'm like, that's like the most perfect response. And it's not that, like, maybe you're like, I think I look great naked, but it's not everyone's business to see. And
Exactly. And maybe you don't even mind that part, but you don't want everybody to know what you eat or when you go to bed or what TV shows you watch. So it's there's so many things that we're not doing wrong, but we don't want just everybody to know about it.
yes, I definitely have some friends where they're like, I watch TV shows that I am embarrassed for people to know that I watch because they're so dumb. And so privacy can be about all sorts of things.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, that's the problem, right? Because we have a mainly online life. We have so much information that we share or that is collected about us. So more and more of all of that is just available and all on their own. It's not that big of a deal, maybe, but if you combine all of that, if you combine the guilty pleasures of TV shows you're watching and the food you're buying and the electricity consumption, when you have friends over, how many people live in your house, when you had a breakup or whatever, um, all that information combined gives even more, yeah, information and yeah,
They
it
can
feels
be
like
used.
cringy, right?
It can be used against you, like
Yeah.
in many ways. But okay, so first of all, I want to tell the audience, if you would like to ask him a question, you can put it in the chat, but I have questions. Um, so I've never done privacy work, so I don't, so I understand that I want privacy, and I understand when well, often I understand when things are not private, but like what sorts of projects or research are you working on or currently excited that you're allowed to share?
Well, during my day job, I do consultancy on mostly privacy, but also AppSec, or the combination in between, which I think is the most interesting bit. And the privacy work varies greatly. My personal most interesting part there is when it's about privacy by design. Um, it can be anything. I mean, doing DPIAs and assessing the maturity of a company, not for security, but for privacy governance, for instance.
What's a
Um,
DPI?
oh, DPIA or PIA. A DPIA is, yeah, sorry, it's a European terminology, data protection impact assessment, or privacy impact assessment, which is, I would say, the legal term for threat modeling. Um, but it's to have the document to prove that you've done your
Did
job
it?
and you assess the security and privacy issues and the legal issues there. Um, and then I have a bunch of side projects. We just started an OWASP privacy project. We don't have much to show for, but like I teamed up with some of my threat modeling buddies because we realized there is an interest in privacy, but specifically the technical people who say, okay, sure, it's, you said it too, like I want to get started, but how do I do it? Um, there's still some information lacking. So we want to bring more to the community on, okay, this is now what you can use, how you can do it, because a lot of the information that is out there is either when you're already a expert privacy engineer and you know all the crypto stuff and you know how to implement differential privacy, or you're a lawyer and you want to use dashboards, but to implement it by design, it feels like there's still a bunch of things missing. And then on another thing that I really enjoy working on is training that I am doing together with Avi Douglan. We have privacy by design training. You can still register for our virtual Black Hat course, 2-day course on, you know, the technical parts, the practical parts of privacy by design. And we also have a 1-day kind of, yes, fast track version that we will be delivering at OWASP Global AppSec in DC. That's like the first time you mentioned this now in so you got the scoop. So it's like fast track. It's really about getting you started, having all the actionable stuff. We also do a focus on AI just because that's really important that you take all of that into account. Um, and yeah, I will be seeing you there too, because you also have a training there.
Yep, I'm going to be training too at DC, and it's going to be a lot of secure coding. I think I'm doing an API security specific workshop, but I honestly forget because I'm training at a lot of conferences coming up. But
Nice.
I'm very excited to see you there. Kim and I also got to see each other at OWASP Global AppSec EU in Spain last month.
Yes.
And she came to the mentoring session with me and Izar and like kind of helped out. And that was really great as well. And we're going to be doing another mentoring session in DC. Is it the end of October or is it the beginning of November? I think it's
I
October.
think it's the first week of November, but it might overlap, so with a couple of October days. Yeah.
Okay, so people should come there.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, okay, so so imagine I'm a person that is brand new. I might be. Um, how would you explain what privacy focused threat modeling is, and then maybe what the difference is between that and like security only focused?
Yeah. So yeah, first of all, for the people unfamiliar with threat modeling, it's a very simple concept. It's basically just thinking about the stuff that can go wrong, but doing that in a structured way, in an intentional way. Following the 4 questions as described by Adam Shostak. What are we working on? What can go wrong? What are we going to do about it? And if we do a good enough job? Um, what makes privacy threat modeling different than security threat modeling? Well, it's mostly in that second and third question, because of course we're not going to look for security threats, but we're going to look for privacy threats. And they look, yeah, a bit different than security because, well, people often think that privacy is about confidentiality. And confidentiality is it's an important factor. I mean, you need to have confidentiality, you need to have access control, you need to have um, well, encrypted data.
Mhm.
But the privacy part, it's its own thing. It's about not having your data being linked, only collecting the strict minimum information, being transparent to your users, giving them right of access, giving them, you know, the way a means to intervene in certain processing activities. So it kind of requires a different mindset to approach it. It's instead of keeping the bad guys out, we want to see what happens, what goes wrong when we are using the data, um, when we are processing other people's information, because well, we care about our users, so that also means we need to care about their data, and
Yeah.
that we can only use it for the things we should use it for, not use it for other purposes and all of that.
Yeah, so I used to work at the Canadian Revenue Agency, which is the tax office. And my mom worked there for over 20 years. And I remember when they're onboarding me, they're very, very serious about the privacy of Canadians. And basically they're like, if you go and look up a person's financial data and you are not an auditor who is actively assigned to that file now, no questions, just fired. And then on top of that, they're like, if you are assigned a file and we find out later you knew that person and you didn't tell us you had a conflict of interest, warning, second time fired. Like very, very serious. And they have all of these systems to monitor this. And my mom said, like, you would not believe how many people would say to her, like, hey, can you like look up this person's information? And she's like, so one, I would get fired. Two, what is wrong with you? Three, do you not understand? And she would get like so offended. She's like, you think I'm the type of person that doesn't respect privacy? And she'd be really upset.
I want to move to Canada because when I was building a house and going for a loan, I was going out with friends, and a friend of a friend was saying like, "Oh, you're going for a loan? Oh, you're talking to the bank I work at? Okay, that's interesting. I'm gonna look you up tomorrow to see what you can." No, you shouldn't be able to do that. Oh my God, no.
I remember one of my sisters went to open up, or no, she was doing something at the bank, and the bank teller, she's like, oh, she needs some sort of special check to give to a landlord as like a deposit. And he's like, well, I'm looking at your bank and I don't think you can afford to get an apartment. And she's like, excuse me? Like, you don't get to sit there and look through my bank statements and then offer judgments. I believe she might have said a four-letter word to him. Um,
You should
but
have, yeah.
I'm just so shocked that people don't understand that, like, that's not okay. Like, would you want people to look gross, Kim? Gross.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And well, these are like the obvious things when you see things going wrong, but it's not only when people are abusing the system, it's often also when the system is being set up to just use information and abuse information. We have the data anyways. Let's just also process the purchase history to
Mhm.
also send out, well, advertisement, you can say maybe, but still you kind of need consent before you can use all that information, or to tell people, hey, you bought a lot of this food, maybe you should get, I don't know, a gym subscription or whatever. Um, a lot of information can be deduced, but it's not because you have the information that you should be processing at all. So it's the not just protecting your assets as we do for security. It's like, let's keep everything safe because we care about it. It's really about, we care about the data, we care about the users. Let's keep them safe, which also means that we need to make sure that we are not doing anything wrong.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. When I was running We Hack Purple, I remember hiring different marketing consultants and firing a bunch of them in a row because their main suggestions for marketing were all things that I felt did not respect the We Hack Purple community. And so, and my customers, lots of them don't pay because there's lots of free services we had, but all of them, in my opinion, are customers and we should respect them. And they were like, let's do retargeting ads. I'm like, that's spying on them and that's creepy. And they're like, let's do this, let's do that. Like, let's take your list and upload it to Google. And I was like, and then like I would explain privacy to them and they're just like, I remember one of them saying, like when I was letting him go, well, I guess you just don't like money and your company's not going to succeed. And I'm like, I firmly believe that I can respect their privacy and give respect to every single customer and treat them how I want to be treated and still have a successful business. And like clearly since we got acquired, that worked, right? But like the fact that I could have like three marketing consultants in a row that would berate me for wanting to respect privacy, like it really made me not have good feels about marketing.
No, I know. And as you say, I'm sure you can still do marketing without, violating everybody's privacy. You might need to be a bit more creative than just using the basic, violating stuff. But yeah,
Yeah,
it
like,
it shouldn't be conflicting.
right. Okay, so I should probably get slightly back on track because there were things that I specifically wanted to ask you. So you mentioned an OWASP project, which I realize is off topic, but is it the top
It's not the one you
10?
shared in the chat.
No,
No.
it's a different one.
It's called the Privacy Reference Project. But basically, we just have like a landing page that explains the project. We don't have the content yet. We're just starting to kick it off and
Okay.
defining actually what we're doing. We want to have like a first deliverable out and then invite everybody to join us. Um, so very excited. Just need time to actually work on this stuff. But
Well, I'm glad it's more than another top 10 list because a top 10 list is a great kickoff to a
exactly.
topic,
Yeah.
but it's like having one bite of a meal.
Yeah. So we actually had a workshop at ThreatModCon in Barcelona after the OASP conference where we had this, well, basically it was about this project that we kind of kickstarted there, discussing a definition for privacy and basically asking like you people here in the room that care about security, threat modeling, AppSec, you care about privacy too. What are like the main pain points on what would be interesting to get started with? We're still processing all that information, but um, yeah, it's basically first of all having that information out there. What can we actually do from a more technical perspective, but also about getting buy-in, about aligning privacy in your SDLC, for instance, because I've heard too many people, well, lawyers or privacy experts coming in and saying, well, we have this whole thing you should do. So go do that in isolation, and then the security people can do that. But we're kind of both, we want similar things, sometimes the same things, but it doesn't make sense to do it separately. Let's do it together. Let's align it together. Yeah.
It saves time and money and also make sure that each of them account for each other's changes. So you don't have the security team accidentally doing a thing that causes a lack of privacy and vice versa. If you do it
Yeah.
together,
Exactly. Yeah, so it's both. It's like usually the security program is much more mature than the privacy program. So that's good news for the privacy people that we can like join the security program, sort of, because that already has more maturity. But as you say, I mean, if from a security perspective, you say, well, we need to have strong authentication, for instance, you log on with your EID or whatever, and then the privacy people come in and they only be brought in, just before launch or after launch or whatever. And they say, no, that's not possible. We should be able to also have anonymous use. Well, then your EID authentication not have been the best selection there. And well, that might be
yeah.
something that's easily fixed, but you can see that for different decisions that can have a bigger impact. And it's not something that we can sprinkle some privacy fairy dust on top and it's magically fixed. It needs to be, by design.
So in my latest book, I talk about privacy and I gave sort of like the general privacy definition. And then I added one by a woman named Abigail, and
Yeah, I
I can't
struggle
say her last.
pronouncing her name. I know her.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she is great. And she talks about how privacy is not only the right to just not have people watch over what you're doing, but to not be interrupted and bothered and pestered while you're in private moments. Like
Yeah.
having 400 pop-ups pop up at you, or having to accept a GDPR thing everywhere you go, or you literally cannot surf the internet. And like, I would like to know what your definition of privacy is, because it feels hard to define.
It has to do with, oh man, I should know it by heart by now. Um,
Sorry.
Making sure that individuals have agency. And agency is a broad thing, right? It's not just about deciding whether I share information with you, but also I can sort of decide what you will do with it. And you should actually follow my request. If I tell you don't share with anybody else, I need
Yeah.
to be able to trust you for not sharing it with anybody else, or for not using it um, for other purposes. So it's
Yes.
protecting against, well, abuse, misuse, because often it's not intentional. It's not like, you know what we're gonna do? Let's figure out how we can ruin our users' privacy. It's often just because people are not aware. They just go like, yeah, we have this data. Let's do something cool with it. Look. And then of course, as a user, you can feel violated, but it's not because it was intentionally like, let's break something.
Yeah.
All of that needs to be taken into account. I will share you the actual definition that when I
And
find it, but I
I
rather
like
start.
what you said though better. So having like a strict definition usually is harder to understand than a person just talking about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the definition, I asked a bunch of privacy friends and security friends already. The more legal data protection people, they don't like the word agency, because when you talk about data protection, it's not actually about agency. It's because
Consent?
sometimes you just need to give your data away when the tax what is the word there?
The
Company,
tax
agency,
office wanting you to
office.
do your taxes?
I mean, you can't say, well, no, sorry. I can't share my information. I was just gonna pay zero taxes. That's not something that you can do. But even then, you should have some agency about what happens in, there shouldn't be happening anything in addition to like the stuff that is legally obligated to happen. So I would say that that agency still kind of holds there.
Mhm.
Um, I see in the comments something about ownership. Um, that's really so coming from a computer science background, that was a word that I tended to use for data. And that really freaks out lawyers, because the concept of ownership doesn't exist in personal data. It's not that I own the data. It's not that if I give my data to you that you own the data. No, I'm still the data subject, and you become the controller or the processor, and that gives you responsibilities, but it never becomes ownership from a law kind of perspective. So while I do like the term, especially in the privacy world, it confuses a lot of people. So I tend to stay away from that.
Okay. But that's interesting because like in my brain I would have thought similar. So what Eric said for people watching later is like maybe it's the ownership of personal data and the exclusive right to know or act upon it. And I feel like part of GDPR is the idea that you have rights. So when people collect your personal data, that you're given rights and you can say, I want you to delete it. And they have to. They can't be like Ashley Madison, where they make you pay to delete your data, then they keep it
Exactly.
anyway.
Yeah. Well, within reason, right? It's not that I can send you 500 euros and then I go to the bank and say, forget that I said it. Give my 500 euros back. It needs to be, within reason. You can't just ask to delete anything. Um,
Well, or it's like you've sent 500 euros, then you're like, please delete those transactions.
oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you can't. Yeah,
I want it to not be on paper that I
exactly.
sent
Yeah.
this money and not be visible, like perhaps in court.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's a different thing, but yeah.
But
Yeah.
okay, so that's so interesting. Okay, so because this is new and not a lot of places are doing it, are there common mistakes that organizations are making when they're trying to do privacy or when they're trying to do like especially privacy threat modeling because that's so new?
I think it mainly is within those misconceptions we already touched upon, the mixing security and, well, confidentiality and privacy. The mindset is one issue. So what I try to do when I do a privacy threat modeling workshop is either have a security threat modeling workshop first, or just have a couple of minutes, moments to get the security stuff out of people. Because even when you say, now we're going to focus on privacy, the first 10 problems you're going to see or going to hear are, oh, there's not an encryption here, maybe, and the access control there. And those are important. And at some point, they're going to bubble up. But
Yeah.
it shouldn't, I mean, they're important, but you probably are going to cover them when you talk about security. So let's try to use the privacy time for privacy specific stuff, like linking, identifying, non-repudiation, which is a very interesting one because that's the opposite of repudiation for security threats. So as a privacy person, you sometimes want to be able to deny that something happened, and
Mhm.
that freaks out a lot of security people or lawyers as well. But yeah, plausible deniability is in some cases something that is important, and it can be niche situations like whistleblowing systems, but it can also be um, an HR system where you can complain about colleagues. Shouldn't be able to trace it back to you because that, yeah, that doesn't feel safe. You lose the trust um, in the system, or in the organization. So it's the mindset, the understanding of what privacy actually is, and I think that is essential. It probably needs a bit more preparation than a security threat modeling workshop to make sure that everybody is on the same page.
Yeah.
Because, well, most people, if you just say, okay, spoofing threats, they kind of know what you're talking about, or tampering threats. If I'm going to talk about non-repudiation threats or linking threats, you need to have an understanding of what that actually means. Um, so there needs to be a good moderator at least, or have people in the room have done like their homework and got a bit of background information to make it run smoother.
That sounds good. So I also wanted to ask about, so how to word this question. So I see a lot about like secure by design. So the Canadian government or cyber.gc.ca, they have like this page of 14 things that you should do for software. And one is you should do privacy by design. And then there's zero examples and zero explanation of what that means. And often like people are like, yeah, secure by design. And I'm like, how so? They're like, well, just like design it securely and stuff. And it's super vague. And I'm like, how can you do that? So then now I'm hearing like regulators and people say privacy by design. And also, shouldn't it be private by design or privacy respecting by design?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And so,
Okay, there's a bunch of things that I want to touch upon here. First of all, the term private or privacy, I try to stick with privacy respecting. Private doesn't cut it for me. Private is too much like confidential, and it's like not enough. It might be enough in certain contexts and situations, but it's broader than just making sure no, like my neighbor doesn't know what I'm talking about. It is about also those data subject rights that we talked about and all of that. So it's much broader. Um, from a European perspective, yeah, I don't want to get into this, but I feel like I need to just touch upon it because if I have privacy people in the room, they will grill me on this. It's data protection by design and not necessarily privacy by design. I am one of the people who tend to kind of use both terms interchangeably, which is wrong. Data protection is coming from more legislation and is, well, protecting the data. But that also means For instance, if you are outside of Europe, you should have like a co-controller who is within Europe, or you need to check all legitimate basis. There should be a legitimate interest to process information. So it has a lot of things that, as technical people, we look at like, yeah, it's not our thing. Privacy, on the other hand, is in theory, that by definition is much broader than just the technical stuff we're talking about. It's as Abigail and your friend said, it's about people peeking into your window and all of that stuff. So we're kind of my focus here, our conversation is on that intersection between data protection and privacy. We can call it data privacy or online privacy, or I don't know. I don't like any of those terms, so I just say privacy. That was a lot of explanation. To come back to the topic on GDPR. Yes, that was her. Um,
Abigail Dubenecki.
yes. She's
I put it
awesome.
in the chat.
Yeah. Um, so GDPR indeed mentions the by design, by default aspect.
Mhm.
Why does privacy and privacy threat modeling and threat modeling in general apply here? Well, the same reason why it also, I think, is very important for new legislations like the AI Act, the CRA, NIS2, all European legislations focused on cybersecurity. They all very heavily focus or require you to have risk assessments, threat identification, or risk identification. But how can you identify risks? Well, you need to find the threats, you need to find the problems. So you need to have threat modeling.
Yeah.
So while it's not really explicitly mentioned in those legislations, well, the only right way to do it is to do threat modeling. Also, GDPR requires DPIAs. DPIAs mean you assess the impact of problems. Well, how do you assess the impact? You first need to know what can go wrong. So basically, you do a threat modeling exercise. What we see in practice is that people are just looking around and just imagining like, oh, that looks like a risk. And that risk is that this information might as well be stolen, and that will impact 10 people on average and cause one death. I've read reports like that are completely,
Like,
I don't know how you can, yeah. So yeah, we need a structured approach for that, and threat modeling is like the perfect way to go. And I think there it's again important that you have security and privacy together. You're doing threat modeling anyways. You should have been doing it without a legislation too, but you're doing it for security. The privacy people need to do it for privacy, or actually basically the project owner should make sure that people are doing it for both. So just join forces, save time. You need to understand the system anyway. So if you look for the threats, you can be much more effective and efficient if you combine it.
so I'm off topic again, and I'm sorry, but so I have a friend that's studying user experience, and I was talking to him about accessibility because accessibility is something's important to me. So a lot of my family members, including me, have various disabilities. So like I just signed to narrate my new book, and it is certainly not for the money. Um, I'm going to get something like
Cool.
100 Canadian dollars a day or something stupid. Um, but you do it because you want it to exist for people that aren't fully abled, right? And like, I wonder if we could put like privacy and threat modeling and user experience and accessibility and like all of those things together into a threat model so we could like account for each other because we don't want to add a privacy thing that then makes it so that like visually impaired people can never, ever, ever use that site, right? Like,
Yeah. And then the way around also for the UI UX people, doing the threat modeling or being included in the threat modeling is very important, because if you get your user story, whatever, ask for this type of information, for instance, ask for location information. Well, should that be like exact coordinates, or maybe is the state enough? And then everything in between there as option. Should you make something an opt-in or an opt-out? All of those things have a big impact on privacy, and we see that it's often pushed to do the dark patterns and be kind of like, unless you hate kittens or puppies, accept this, because otherwise, I don't know, a
You're a
puppy is
monster.
gonna die. So yeah, that awareness also needs to flow there, and there should be not just within the development part, but also in the user interface. Experience should be more attention to usability, of course, but also to privacy.
Yeah, because I feel, so this might sound weird, but like I feel like privacy is the need of our user, whether they recognize they have this need or not. And then accessibility is the need of our user. And security, whether the user understands or not, is it's their need that we are serving, right? Like when we're securing or adding privacy or all of these things to our products, like it's 99% for our users rather than for our company. Like security, I guess like we defend our companies too, but I mean like when we're building a product to serve them, like anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. So
No, I completely agree with that. It's just that I don't think all companies see it like we see it. I think most companies see security or give the budgets to the security people as in, well, our stuff is important, so let's protect it. And you know what? The user information, that's also protected, so good for them. But it's not like the core necessarily, which I think is weird because you want to have trust. I mean, yeah, I think trust is very much essential here, and also will impact your privacy and at least how you experience it as a user. Am I okay with sharing my information with that company? Are they actually gonna protect it? Protect as in not just security, but handle it with care.
yeah. Oh my gosh, I have so many questions. We have like 19 minutes left. Okay. So we've talked a lot about threats to privacy. What would be some big privacy threats that you see that maybe are like emerging or new or that maybe people hadn't thought of, like AI?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, AI. It's so. I actually don't have like one specific example to give. I think what is, especially in this whole AI hype cycle, where we're in now, important, yes, we can look at all the specific, you have prompt injection, membership inference, a bunch of things that are now new words. But if you actually look like what that means under the hood, you still have pretty much your Stride and your LINDDUN basic security and privacy threats, just with an AI flavor on top. So I
Mhm,
think what the main thing is that we don't forget our basics, like our core security and privacy essentials need to be there.
mhm,
And then you can also look at the AI specific stuff. Of course, if you are investing in that, you should understand those specific things as well. But if you understand the basics, you kind of are gonna figure them out, whether you know the fancy AI specific term or not. Um, but yeah, AI basically amplifies everything that is there already. I read a bunch of like newspaper headlines and LinkedIn posts of people saying like, oh, no, everything I put in an LLM, it is remembered. I cannot remove it anymore. That's horrible. It's like that's the same for like for decades that, well, decades we've
with
been
Google.
putting so much information into social
Search
media,
engine.
into whatever, I mean, all the apps we have on our phones, we just inject all that information, and it's not that we can ask it to be removed. We're not entirely certain that it's going to be removed. It's now just that we have AI, we have LLMs. It becomes so much more obvious what is out there. I mean, in so many companies now that they have Copilot that is integrated in their document system,
Mhm.
they go like, you shouldn't have seen that, or I should not be able to see like what managers wrote about me or how much money the big boss is making or whatever. It was there before, but now with AI, it's just like at your fingertips. So it becomes much more problematic. Um, yeah, and then we have all these evolutions. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the smart glasses. That's something that creeps me out.
Not okay.
Anyways, like you don't know when you're being recorded. Other people, well, the people that wear the glasses get so much more information, so there's an imbalance of information because they basically know who you are or can know who you are, and you have not even a clue that they are recording you. But also depending how that evolves, if like the cameras are from within. So they register your pupils or they do that with your conversation partner. I mean, it's already bad enough that our phones or our computers track everything we search for online. If now there's
Mhm.
also going to be a device that sees everything we see and how our pupils respond to something, that's very scary.
I went to a meetup 2 weeks ago to watch, and like while we were waiting for people to start, we're talking about various things, and someone's like, how's your week? And I was like, oh, I had to deal with this stressful thing or whatever. And like a whole bunch of us were talking. And then after I found out that there was an AI recording and analyzing things, and it put at the very top my personal thing that I did and then emailed it to everyone, over 100 people that came to the meetup. And I was like borderline mortified. And it wasn't like I said a very personal thing, but I was like, oh, I was dealing with this week and it was really stressful. And then it literally had almost that exact word as like the second sentence of the summary that it emailed. And only like 6 people had come to the thing. And I thought I was sharing it with 6 people, not 100 and however many that are registered for that meetup. And I was like,
That's
I am
not
very
okay.
uncomfortable with this.
Yeah, yeah, well, you have that with all the online Zooms and Teams and whatever. A lot of people send their AI assistants there to record, and sometimes it's really not supposed to be recorded. Sometimes it's like a private, sensitive conversation, and then suddenly yeah, it's registered, and yeah, you don't even know often.
Yeah. Um, Literally right before we got on this call, I had a friend text me and say, are you concerned as like a content creator and trainer that people are going to train their AIs on you and then they're going to make training and other things that like look like you and sound like you? And I'm like, I literally have been arguing with many different, so basically if I'm working with the training company, they're not doing that to me. But I've actually had to decline several because they just wouldn't change. And they're like, yeah, we're going to train our AI on you and on your training and then do whatever we want with it. And like for my audiobook, originally the contract said they would train their AI on my voice and could reuse it and repurpose it any way they wanted indefinitely without compensating me. And I was like, absolutely not. Like I've done voice work for like 20 something years. No, you may not. Like I make all my money off intellectual property and my voice. And that is not okay with me. And so they happily removed it and didn't realize that it could be interpreted on it. They're like, actually, to be quite blunt, we wanted to use the AI to analyze to see if there was a grammatical mistake or something. We had no intention to do that. So we're very happy to remove all of that and make it extremely clear we would never do that to our narrators. And I was like, yeah. And it was just written in a very loose, open way because
Right.
lawyers.
Yeah, of
But
course.
like, you must see stuff like this constantly.
Yeah, and you see the first law cases are popping up now. I haven't read the details, but I saw that one case was like that for that apparently you can still use some information, but not to um, scrape everything, like use all illegally scraped books. You kind of have to own the book before you can use it. But even then, it's not because I bought your book that I can now create content from you. So I think we are looking at some interesting 1, 2, 3 years of lawsuits to see how that's actually going to settle. But it's not looking good, honestly, because the whole idea of the chat GPTs and whatever open AIs is that, well, we did it. It's better that you change the law rather than, oops, we're gonna fix it. And it's gonna be very hard. You know, the right to be forgotten that we talked about before,
Mm.
put that in an LLM. It's really hard because well, or whatever, a model, because the model is being trained, and you can apply techniques to remove certain things, but it's a very difficult and time consuming and resource consuming thing. So they're not going to do that in practice.
Yeah. I yeah, I uh, so I have a friend who does consulting calls where he helps people, and the company he works for has now decided they're going to take all the old call recordings, run AI over it, and turn it into blog posts and not compensate him, and then also have it turn into like Q&A articles, and then also train their LLM on it so that now their customers can just ask the LLM instead of him, meaning he gets paid a lot less. And they're like, they sent him an email this morning celebrating this new service, and he's just like, Tanya, I just don't even know what to say. Like, what do I do? And I'm just like, I I don't know. Like that to me, that's not okay. But like, does everyone quit their job and protest? Because that's not what will happen is one person will quit and protest and everyone else will stay because they have bills to pay and they are not financially able to just like leave their employment, right? And like we end up being forced into things that are not, I don't know. I'm doom scrolling now.
Yeah, it's I'm going back and forth. I'm thinking like, oh, everybody's gonna get fired, but also if you look at the results of LLMs that we have at this point, they can do a lot of cool stuff, but they often fail to get like the details right, or the big chunks right. So I mean, they're predicting texts, they're not actually reasoning. Maybe eventually, I don't know what's gonna happen, but at this point, I'm just relying on that stuff. I don't think it's a smart idea. Nevertheless, a lot of companies, a lot of people are doing it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So we have a question in the chat. I'm curious about the sort of systems that are chosen for privacy threat modeling today. So what kinds of systems, because they
What?
probably don't threat model every system at a company for
Oh,
privacy.
okay. So well, it really depends again. Wow, that's a very consultancy answer. Um, the the domain where you're in, if you're working in a very restricted, legally bounded domain, banking, medical, whatever, you kind of have to be sure that at least the core elements are very, not just threat model, but also documented properly.
Mhm.
What we see on regular systems is that you will focus on, for instance, all the client-facing stuff, and then specifically on what are you collecting, what are you sharing. Um, Actually, also what is happening behind the scenes, I think is even more important. But at least when you are looking at the stuff that you're collecting, you kind of, I mean, I would suggest to slice it out so you see where the information is coming in, but then you will also think about, okay, this information is coming in, what are we doing with it? So, but still those entry points, those exit points are typically the triggers to get started with the conversation. Um, what system? Yeah, I mean, whenever personal data is involved, and that's pretty much all systems nowadays, because personal data, of course, it is name and address and social security number, but each combination of information that is tied to an individual, it shouldn't be already identified, it should potentially be identifiable. And the more information you have, the more likely it is that you can tie it together, even without saying my name. I don't know, the blonde lady in Belgium that talks a lot about LINDDUN and privacy threat modeling. You don't mention my name, but you mentioned bits and pieces that probably make me identifiable again. So basically everything that is not just like um, the grass is green, the sun is shining, all of that. When there is some link to an individual, that's personal data, you need to take privacy into account. So it's, I, but when people say we don't process personal data, I'm not, usually it's not correct.
I like that you gave a nuanced answer. I like that you weren't like, it's this, because it is nuanced and it sounds really, it's a hard question.
Yeah, it's well, that's what I like about privacy, but that also makes it hard. It's like everything is nuanced, everything is like it's hard to formalize because you think, okay, this is like the rule, and then you but wait, in that case it's like this, and then it's like that, and there's an exception to this. So there's a lot to discover. I'm not sure whether we're gonna formalize everything, but that makes it so interesting.
Okay, I have a soft question, and then we're going to do the wrap up. And so, if someone's new to privacy threat modeling, what would be a way that they could start learning or start practicing?
So I'm gonna be biased and say the Linden Go cards are something that I think are very interesting. Um, well, for people familiar with the Elevation of Privilege card game, we very much use that as inspiration. So it's a deck of cards that give you inspiration. Basically, it's to help you do a structured brainstorming on privacy threats. It's, I think, 34 cards that explain to you, well, a linking threat for information that is entering the system. If you have this situation, maybe this can happen. Does that apply to your system at that situation? And we have that for all the different Linden categories, for different what I would call hotspots in the system. So that's something that you can either use as background information or as structured brainstorming. When you want to get started with threat modeling in general, for instance, the book by Izar Terendash and Matt Coles on threat modeling has a bunch of different methodologies that you can that they compare to see which one matches you. It also mentions Linden, so it has privacy in there too. And of course, Adam's books on threat modeling and Brooks' books on threat modeling. There's a bunch of people who wrote really good stuff. But I think the most important thing to start with privacy and privacy threat modeling specifically is not to get overwhelmed. Because I talked to a bunch of people saying, okay, this is so interesting, and we read GDPR and we want to do everything. And then we started and we don't know, we got lost, so we decided to do nothing. So just start doing something. Whenever you have a new project that says we're dealing with personal information, just pause, think, do I really need it? And do I need all of it? I think that's like the first thing you should do. Like have one or two questions added to your security flows, bring it in gently instead of having this big, huge privacy program or method because it's gonna be too much.
I think I managed to find every single thing you talked about. And that's
Okay.
so many resources. Oh my gosh. But now I have the fun question of, so I suspect that people watching this are like, I want more Kim. How can I get more Kim? Like, does she have a blog? Does she have a YouTube channel? Does she have a LinkedIn? Like, what has she got that I can
I
follow
really
her?
need to make time to do a website to combine all of it. Yeah, I try to write regularly on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect there. I have a YouTube channel where I try to gather all the online things I've did, which is called, I need to look, Kim
You got
Wuyts
it.
dash privacy. Well, you can see me on the AppSec Village in Vegas, where we're gonna have a workshop, me together with Avi, on, we called it Context and Cringe, on privacy threat modeling, basically. A virtual Black Hat 2-day training, I think it's August 4 and 5. A 1-day privacy by design training in the shadow of AI at OWASP DC. And I am hoping that some more like conferences and places will pop up. But yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to get links to every single thing. I might have to get some of them after. Oh my gosh. This is amazing. So like obviously I'm following you. Aha, I found you. Breaking Bad Privacy. Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
We're
Perfect.
actually, I think, the first and only privacy training at Black Hat. I think this is the first year they actually have a specific privacy category for Black Hat training. So very excited that yeah.
I think that it's going to be amazing. I think that people are, so maybe I'm biased, but like I think it's very important. I feel like security is getting more and more attention because of breaches and other things, but I think that as marketers and other companies invade our privacy more and more, eventually the general public will be like, this is not acceptable. Most of them have no idea how much Google knows about them. And so I feel like there's really there's going to be an awakening point where the public learns what these companies are doing to us and finally understand, and they're going to strike back. And right now we're having governments speak for us, and they're doing a so-so job.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting times. I'm sorry for the
It's okay.
intermezzo. There was somebody at the door and
Okay.
my kid didn't know what to do with that, but you know, it's
Okay.
life.
Kim, thank you so very much for being on the Semgrep webinar with me. I really appreciate your time, and we are going to send a copy of this with all the links so people can find all of your stuff and the recording. And thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I always appreciate talking with you. It's always fun, and while talking about privacy and threat modeling, it's also fun. So yeah, thank you so much. And I will be seeing you at one of the upcoming conferences, I hope.
Hmm.
And all
Thank
of
you.
you too, I hope.
Yes, exactly. Thank you everyone for attending this event, and we will see you next time, specifically next week with Bing and I hope everyone has a great day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.